Listen, I am not the AI expert. Think about me as like I'm channeling all the AI expertise of section of all of our customers, our prospects, everything that we've read and played with and experimented with. And we're trying to channel that to you in a time efficient way as possible. However, I've asked our team to add post-it notes to certain slides that I think you should screenshot. So if you've got your screenshot tool ready, use it. If you're not a member, because you won't get these slides, and there are some very valuable, in my opinion, slides in here. Just in terms of section, real quick, if you don't know us, we have a built-in AI Academy with about 30 courses, including a core curriculum of 4 to 5 AI classes that are actually built with avatars, and so they're constantly updated and available in multiple languages. We now, as Maxwell showed you, have built Prof AI, our new learning platform, using AI to teach you AI, kind of meta. We've now educated actually 25,000, close to 30,000 students on AI, and we have about 100 enterprise customers, and we're a small company, so we use AI every day. I think we do the work of about 40 or 50 people, quite frankly, and that's the sense that I get from my team, who probably work too hard, including nights and weekends, but we use AI a lot every day internally to basically sort of maximize our productivity. So good. We're going to talk about tactics and strategies that work, I think, for any size team or organization. Everything that we talk about here, we've done at Section. And as I said already, we're a team of around 30 people, growing quickly, but still small. Our clients are mostly larger organizations, so I'll also share what we've learned from working with them. We just have a lot of conversations every week about how to successfully deploy and what we've learned from those who have already failed. A lot of organizations are on their second or third attempt at deploying AI into their teams. And so we can learn from them. We all can. So that's our goal today. And this is finally, when you think about Section, think about us as the anti-Accenture, or actually someone sent me a message on LinkedIn and said, you're the anti-McKinsey. We're fast, we're cost effective, we know our shit, we get results. Okay, here's our agenda. We have 4 primary components of our agenda. We're going to talk about the state of AI adoption inside the enterprise. We'll talk about a couple case studies. One you might have heard before, a new one that's more recent. Then spend most of our time on the core framework and the components of that framework. That's when you're going to want to screenshot those slides, and then we'll end with some closing thoughts. I hope you have time for questions, but I don't know. It's going to be tight. We can see the potential. This is an important study if you're trying to convince others inside your organization about the power of AI. This is the recent HBS Wharton study using product managers at Procter & Gamble, basically trying to prove the value of working with an LLM inside of that, essentially that job function or that role. And you could see here, team no AI better than individual, but individual with AI actually beats the team, the human team. And of course, the best was the most humans, the team, which actually was pairs of people. It was 2 people on the team, and then AI. So we're getting more and more evidence of this in terms of the LLM's capabilities and its impact on our work. Consumers and small business love it. That's why it's great that so many of you are from smaller organizations, because I think we see the advantage faster. We see the gain that we can get, the productivity gain, the cognitive gain we can get from using AI. So like other revolutions in the enterprise, they actually start outside the enterprise. Some of our best enterprise software companies actually start as consumer applications like WhatsApp, or start in small business. Enterprises move more slowly. They've got more concerns around security and risk and all those things. And so we're at the right moment, meaning this has been a consumer and small business revolution. OpenAI will pass 1 billion users in the next few months for ChatGPT. That's just incredible growth. People love AI, and soon I think enterprise will, but it's been a struggle. It's harder to get teams of any size, quite frankly, up this learning curve. So again, our goal today is to show you a playbook to help you do that. People and process are in the way. That actually might be a good thing. We'll talk about that at the end, but we can see what's happening, right? It's us. that are getting in the way of adoption, not the technologies. The technologies certainly have some limitations, and obviously including hallucinations, but they're getting better and better. And to some extent, we're in the way. Technology is not the main roadblock. It is things like talent, risk government, governance, change management. People are anxious, understandably. I think we should be anxious. I don't think we should be scared. I don't think we should be frozen. I don't think we should be, not engaged. But I think it's okay to acknowledge our anxiety because we don't know how this will change how we work. This is all unwritten. There is no playbook here. If anybody's got predictions, I don't buy them. Meaning, I think the only way we can figure this out is get in and start doing it, and we'll see how this impacts us, our tasks, then our jobs, then our teams, and then our organizations. This will unfold over the next decade. Many employees struggle with what's the right use case for AI. So even if you get them proficient with AI, they then struggle with, well, specifically, how should I use AI in my job, in what tasks? This is our most recent survey. So we survey twice a year. So Sections just completed its spring survey. We survey 5,000 knowledge workers, US, UK, and Canada. So I'm giving you some sneak preview of the survey results. And as you can see here, experts are fine. They seem comfortable finding their use cases. But as you move sort of down to where the average team member or worker is, higher levels of not concern, but lack of understanding of what's the right use case. And we know that pilots, we've been hearing this data now for a couple of years, whether it be from Accenture or from, in this case, Rand Corporation, this recent data around pilots getting stuck and not getting into deployment. Even so, enterprises, I think of all shapes and sizes, but certainly Fortune 500, they're persevering. There's been so much hype. There's so much expectation about AI and the promise of AI around productivity and efficiency that clearly companies are going to keep plugging away at this, trying to find the path to adoption and then to sort of productivity gains. There are not many enterprise case studies around. If you look at these websites, Microsoft's got the most, not surprising, but if you look at large enterprise case studies, OpenAI and Anthropic, the two independent leaders in AI, don't have many case studies from larger organizations. Again, that makes sense. This is the moment that we're in with AI, which is lots of small business use, lots of consumer use, not so much yet a lot of case studies around larger enterprise. It's hard to be a fast follower. I would suggest for most of us, the right strategy is to be a fast follower. And in terms of look what others are doing and then learn from that and draft right in behind. But it's hard to be a fast follower right now. If it's not going well, no one's telling anyone. So if your pilot's stuck and you haven't deployed it, or your deployment failed, or no one's using your LLM, which is very common, you're not telling anybody because you don't want anybody to know you can't figure it out. And if it's going well, you're not telling anyone. You'll notice we won't talk much about our customers, that section, because the customers that are having a lot of success don't want us to. Understandably, they view it as a competitive advantage. And so it's hard for the rest of us to learn and see what's working because, again, there aren't that many case studies out there. And bragging about AI is like bragging about layoff. And so I do think, with some exceptions, most people are kind of being quiet about this, which again, I think makes it harder for us all to learn. There are a few case studies, though. Moderna, we've talked about before. And if you don't know about this case study, I would encourage you to read up about it. They have a small team, AI team. It's a 2-person team, but they did a lot of things very well early, and it's just paid dividends in terms of the rate of their AI adoption internally and the benefit that has accrued to the business. They were clear in terms of a leadership perspective, in terms of the strategy and vision. They identified AI champions early and really enabled those champions. They provided mandatory and then ongoing training, so basic and then advanced training. They did a lot of work around helping employees find role-specific use cases, building GPTs in terms of automations of AI to enable their workforce. So I would say they started with an AI team of 2 people that were experts in change management. So they had a big advantage. This wasn't an initiative out of L&D. It was not an initiative out of HR. It wasn't an initiative out of IT either. IT was an absolute critical partner for Moderna, but it really was this strong, small but strong change management and transformation team that led this effort at Moderna. And now they are reporting publicly 80% of regular usage of AI, which for them is ChatGPT for enterprise. And I think it's 50% are daily, 80 is weekly of the workforce. They have about 5,000 desk workers sitting at keyboards. J&J, to their credit, went public with their struggles and their pivot and their new strategies. But again, we can learn from them, so let's do that. So they went sort of very much bottoms up vision, sort of plant thousands of seeds, let 1,000 flowers bloom. They did not have a champion strategy. This is sort of a year and a half ago. They had mandatory but only basic training, which runs out, I think, pretty quickly. Yeah, sure, you can teach people how to prompt, and you can teach them about what data they can and can't use. That's usually not enough. You've got to get into advanced training and/or use case training, this whole strategy basically created a lot of redundancy and overlap in use cases, a lot of inefficiencies in terms of AI use cases, and so they've pivoted recently and went public with this. After a year of the previous strategy, they've now brought more focus. They've got more people taking advanced training, still not enough in my opinion, and they've got a better focus on sort of use cases, workflows that generate more ROI and sort of more value and less kind of redundancy and overlap. So I think this is the way we should think about it, as sort of a continuum. And I think, again, these are all large companies, but I think we can do the same for small companies and even a team. If you think about your team inside of an organization, we're going to have legacy organizations that are slower to move. You do, I think, as a minimum, want to be a fast-moving incumbent. And I would argue that J&J is trying to be a fast-moving incumbent. They're learning from their sort of mistakes from their first year of experimentation, pivoting their strategy, and now trying to obviously move further along. Digitally native companies section is digitally native. Everything we do is, we don't make things, right? We are a digital company, so we are digitally native. And my goal from 2 years ago is to move us along this AI continuum to be more like an AI native. Like if I started the company today, I'd start Section as an AI native company. I'm trying to move us all the way to the end. Clearly, we all want to be, I think, like digital organizations transforming into AI native organizations as much as we can, or those teams that are digitally native, like marketing teams, sales teams, software engineering teams. Maybe not the whole company, but at least significant teams can move along this continuum to be as much AI native as possible. Okay, well, how will we do that? How do we move our organizations along that continuum to be AI native? We want to demystify AI deployment. It should not be a black box. How do we get from where we are today to be an AI-powered team, an AI native team? We're going to use this model, a workforce transformation model. It's got 4 components, and we're going to walk through all 4 components today. What I want to do is move you from today to tomorrow, meaning many of you are likely have some level of AI adoption. This is what our survey shows, that some amount of your organization, likely under 10%, are AI experts. Can we get you to 50% of your team being AI experts, meaning daily usage of AI in a meaningful way? Can we move you from being more anxious and overwhelmed? We talked about this already, and how would we get you to be more confident? From failed pilots or pilots that just kind of like, one person got value, but the rest of the team could not get value from the pilot, to pilots that are feasible and prove value. And really, I want to get people from AI cheerleading to grounded business-led adoption. There's so much cheerleading, there's so much hype, there's so much bullshit about AI. There's so much people, on LinkedIn. I mean, my feed is full of people that don't actually know how to do this and just want to talk about it. And companies are full of people running around self-proclaiming themselves AI experts. I'm sick of it. And what I want to provide is this model, and to kind of encourage you and support you to do the hard work of running this model on your team, with your team, into your organization. It's every day, every week, every month. This is not rocket science, but it is hard work. And that's what's needed, not cheerleading. We don't need any more cheerleading. This is what I think is possible. So most of you are on this webinar are in organizations of under 1,000 employees. I believe you can get to 80% adoption within 1 year. That should be your ambition. That's high, meaning that's ambitious. It's certainly possible. And I think if you do this, your organization will be transformed in some way. It will be more productive. It will be more capable. It will be more competitive. It's going to be hard to measure, and we'll talk about that later. But this is possible, and I think you should set your sights here, not at 20 or 30%, but at 80%. Your organizations aren't that large. Larger organizations, it will take longer. Up to 5,000 employees, I would suggest it might take 2 years. That's what it took Moderna. 5,000 employees and above, everything up to 100,000 employees, of course, it will take longer. These changes will take longer. But I think if you're under 1,000 employees, certainly under 100, you can do this very quickly. And that should be your ambition, in my opinion. You will need to exercise this model from the top and from the bottom. And again, we'll talk through this now. But it does need to come from you if you're the leader. If you're not the leader, you need to influence the leader in order to engage the leadership of your team or company in order for this to come from the top and then from the bottom. I don't think it works from only one direction. I do think we need both working in tandem. So in terms of the framework, the first thing we want to talk about is from the top. From what's leadership supposed to do here? Set direction, reduce uncertainty, so teams can adopt AI confidently and consistently. And consistently is really important. This is a long game. It'll take you 12 months to get to 80% adoption, and then it'll never end, meaning you will continue to be working these AI muscles that you build so your organization becomes more and more AI native, if you will. I think without leadership, teams hesitate, policies are vague, adoption stalls. We see this all the time at Section. We see this all the time when prospects, companies call us and say, can you help? And we say, well, what's been going on? This is often what's been happening, a lack of leadership and therefore stalling out. Here's how I think about this simply. You need an exec sponsor, you need a head of AI, you need a technical lead. I've been very vocal about heads of AI should not be technical leaders. Heads of AI, in my opinion, should be business leaders who understand the business, are creative and entrepreneurial, and can bring the technology into the workforce. They'll need to partner with a technical head of AI, the VP of engineering, the head of IT, whoever it is that does need to buy and procure the AI, does need to make sure the data is secure, connect company data to the AI. So you will need to partner there. But I don't think this should be a technology-led initiative. I think this is so much about change management, so much about creating business impact, that I think we need a head of AI to do that who's not a technical lead. And you do need to have a sponsor to support you. The rest of the leadership team needs to get on board and quickly. 20 to 40%, something like that, a leadership team within 90 days, maybe all of it within 90 days. I don't know, it depends how big your leadership team is. Don't hang around here. Certainly, depending on how big the team is, most of the leadership team within 6 months needs to be using AI themselves every day. So I don't mean they need to be on board. I don't mean they need to be talking about it at team meetings. That they need to do that as well, but they need to be using AI. I do think as the head of AI, you might have to do this personally. I think at some point you need to stop doing trainings if you're the head of AI. But I get it. When I talk to heads of AI, I do know, and they tell me how much time they spend doing one-on-one trainings or small group trainings. And I think that is appropriate at the beginning, and particularly with leadership or managers, again, depending on the size of your org, or frankly, key influencers like chiefs of staff or executive assistants, EAs. Those are great people, really, high leverage individuals that can influence others, train them as well, and bring them along. So I think it's a good use of time if you're the head of AI in the first year. It's not a good use of time after that. Like do some of this yourself, and then find training partners or vendors that can help you scale this out. But leadership needs to not just be cheerleading, they need to be using AI themselves, and they need to be modeling the behavior they want from their teams. You need a winning data policy. No one usually combines those two words, data policy and winning. But I think that it was what we need in AI. Most data policies depress usage. Most data policies scare people, so they don't actually use AI. So that's a fail. A winning data policy is safe, but is practical and encourages usage. It has clarity. It's not don't do anything. Like doing nothing with our data is not going to work. And meaning you won't get any value really from AI. Summarizing emails or getting suggested headlines for a blog post is not really a good use of AI. Or it certainly won't drive the business benefit and impact that we're looking for. It's a place to start, perhaps. So a data policy, red, yellow, green, is a simple one that we use at Section, where our employees know what's red. Obviously, for us, that's client data. No client data can be ever shared with AI. But what's yellow and what's green? We tend to be quite liberal with our data policy, meaning we want it to be a winning data policy. We want our employees using company data in order to brainstorm, use AI as a thought partner, work with it, analyze it, and so on to get value. So create a winning data policy. Then you need a manifesto. This is important. Most companies roll out a data policy or an AI policy that's more about governance. You need something like a manifesto, a point of view. For Section, for example, the core of our AI manifesto, the core of the message that I send as often as I can to the team is using AI is not being lazy, it's not taking a shortcut, it's not cheating. I can't tell you how many people tell me that they think AI could be interpreted as cheating or cutting corners, at their company or in their office or on their team. That's not the case. Working with AI is working smarter, but your team needs to hear that from you. And if you're not the leader of the team, you need to get your leader to write out their point of view as a management team or as a leadership team and share that with everybody, right? What are your expectations about AI? How is this going to help and why is it a good thing? If you can't write it down, then don't bother to buy an LLM and try to deploy it. If you can't write out your manifesto and put it in plain English that encourages usage of AI, then don't bother. Don't buy into the hype and sit on the sidelines for a while. Because deploying AI with a data policy and no real point of view, cultural point of view and behavioral point of view and encouragement, you're not going to get any outcome. You're not going to get any ROI. Do you go even faster? Well, some of you have probably heard of these recent CEO memos that were leaked. Well, one was leaked. I think he probably didn't. He probably leaked it himself. The CEO of Shopify, and then quickly following the CEO of Duolingo, and that's basically that is starting from the top and pushing it down and getting very explicit with expectations. So these are manifestos with real specifics. In the case of Shopify, don't ask for headcount human headcount unless you can prove that the AI can't do it. And Duolingo CEO saying we're going to stop using contractors and try to use more AI. And they both took a lot of flack, I'm sure, for this. Duolingo in particular on TikTok, on social media. But this is the direction they've decided, and at least they're being transparent and clear about it. So they are leading from the top. They are really using additional levers to accelerate the deployment or adoption of AI inside their organization, including in performance reviews at Shopify. And that's a large organization. So you, as a CEO, you do need to pick your levers that you can sort of really use to incent this change. And the large organizations, things like annual performance reviews are a place to do it, right? Because you don't have that many touch points with an organization that large. Duolingo's smaller, under 1,000 employees. So they've decided to get to that 80% adoption number that I talked about earlier. They just decided to make that happen. And in part, the CEO is going to make that happen. And by the way, these are software companies. I don't think they have a choice. I think any product or service where human capital, people, us, is the largest input, essentially the largest cost, I think all those businesses will suffer from a deflationary or price pressure in the coming decade, meaning as AI is introduced in terms of creating and delivering products and services that are highly human capital intensive, that will create a deflationary effect on pricing. So I think the price of software is going to go down, and we're going to have to make software more efficiently. So if you're a CEO of a software company, I frankly don't think you have a choice. Whether you do it now in a year or 2 years or 3 years, that's your call. But I think if you're in a business where human capital is the primary input, you have to prepare for a world in which that product or service, you won't be able to charge as much for it because AI is going to be making more of it. All right, the next part of our core framework is identify enabling champions. You need champions. Can't stress this enough. You need executive leadership. You need champions. If you're a small organization, let's say under 25 people, you only need a handful, 3 or 4 or 5. But don't do this solo as the head of AI. Build a small champion team or AI SWAT team or AI Tiger team. Doesn't matter what you call it. Find your champions. They will do the primary value of champions is they'll surface use cases and model the behavior around how to use AI so they can really help others not get proficient. Training can do that. Your champions can show how to take that proficiency and turn it into use cases, meaning AI-assisted use cases, and actually get value on the ground, grassroots, from AI. You know classical change management theory. You have to start with your innovators, your AI champions. They'll bring in your early adopters and so on. You know the numbers. You need to get past something like 25%, 30 or in that range, maybe as much as 30 or 40, depending on the size of your org, the culture of your organization. But tipping points typically for organizations are in that range where you've really got enough people now where this is the way we're working. We're not going to go back to the old way, and you kind of push on from there. So your champions are the absolutely critical ingredient to get to past that tipping point. They accelerate adoption, they change culture, and they'll create more value in terms of showing these workflows. Because champions will be curious. They've got that curious mindset. They're likely already strong performers. So champions are important because they're likely your high performers already. They have that curious mindset, but they're not frivolous. They likely don't want to play around and just do cool shit. These are strong performers that want to be even more performant. I was talking with an engineering leader at Microsoft a couple of weeks ago. He manages a team of 2,000 software engineers. And what he told me was it was the superstar programmers, the superstar software engineers in his team that were adopting AI faster, kind of counterintuitively. They didn't need the help, but they were getting the help because they could see a way to become even more performant, even more capable. And he thought that was critical from a change management perspective because they were acknowledged as the superstars before AI. And if they were the ones implementing themselves AI in their own workflows, that would be such a strong signal to the rest of the organization. That's why we need to use AI champions, and because they have that intrinsic motivation to figure out AI and then share it with others, become team catalysts. So how do you find them? Lots of ways. They're all pretty easy to execute, if you will. You can interview people. You can do some sort of survey and find people that are already using AI if you're in a larger organization, or you might already know if you're in a smaller team or company. It's the person that's been playing around with this for the past year and a half, or someone who comes in and says, "Hey, check this out." So it won't be hard to find your champions if you don't know them already. If you do know them, it's time to sort of corral them, if you will, and treat them a little bit differently. Moderna used a prompt contest, actually. This is about 2 years ago now. To identify early adopters, they actually offered a trip to the West Coast. I think the sort of prize was 3 days in Silicon Valley. Moderna is based in Boston, Cambridge. And so, there was a real reward there. And I think it was taking 20 sort of early adopters or AI champions. And then they built a forum in which others could sort of participate to kind of coalesce around those champions. And then after the pivot, J&J appointed AI leads at the business unit level. So I would consider them more sort of formal AI champions, if you will. And then you bottoms up with your champions, you you want to build momentum. So an AI use case contest sounds simple, it is, but they work. Get people submitting either prompts or use case suggestions. Lunch and learns, we do them at Section. We're a very AI proficient or expert organization, but there's so much capability in AI and changing that we do our Friday lunch and learns, and we alternate now between an AI and non-AI topic. But a lot of ongoing training and sharing of what's working. An AI channel, we use Slack for that. We have a couple different AI channels in our Slack. You could obviously, some of you might be using Microsoft Teams. And then you've heard me say this before, we do shout outs to AI. Every all hands meeting, our all hands are on Monday mornings. We shout out to humans. We acknowledge the humans that we appreciate from the previous week. And we also acknowledge the AI, and we talk about how AI helped us and in what way. And if it didn't or doesn't, we also talk about where AI failed us. And so, again, you want to share that knowledge in a very organic and ground up way. Proficiency and role specific, we've mentioned this briefly. Most employees aren't getting good hands-on training. L&D is often the source of training inside of organizations, not so much smaller ones. Usually, maybe that's the head of HR. They don't have a lot of budget often, or they think good training is video libraries. And I don't think that's going to be that effective. Giving people 300 AI videos inside of LinkedIn Learning is not going to do anything. It really won't. I mean, your most ambitious and your early adopters, they'll probably already taught themselves on YouTube, which is free, which is great. You probably don't need to buy too much training for them, but for everybody else, think about training that actually works. Don't just check the box on training, which is, oh, we have it. I do think you need to think about, if you've got the training, how will you get people trained? Which is, will you mandate it? That's one option. Will you highly encourage it? That's another. Will you model that behavior and so on? But you do need training, I think, as hands-on as possible. And once you've got basic, you do need to move to more what I call advanced or use case-based training. Okay, so ongoing resources. Once you've trained people, again, we talked about the Slacker Teams channel. Office hours are great. So take your champions. If you're the head of AI, you should probably be doing these office hours. You can't, again, do it every day, but because you're busy, hopefully doing other things. But you do need to kickstart this and raise that proficiency level in your team. So, monthly, or I'd probably really prefer weekly office hours, depending on the size of your organization, and then some sort of resources available to the team. So use case and prompt libraries are a good place to start. And just to share, again, what's working. Prompt libraries, you think we wouldn't still need them? We're all supposed to be now using our agents, but all that stuff is overhyped and further out than we think. These, big tech is always selling something that's not available for a couple of years in reality. So today we're needing to know how to prompt, and constructing great prompts are hard. This is a new skill. So prompt libraries can be very useful for teams. Okay, let's get to the core now, which is use cases. This is the final piece of the framework or the model, which is unlocking meaningful, repeatable, measurable AI use cases and role relevant or role specific use cases. I want you to think about this as a two-pronged approach: personal wins and workflow wins. Personal wins are enabling individuals, after they've been trained with an AI manifesto, encourage them to find their own use cases. So think about this as sort of the DIY part of your strategy in terms of finding use cases. Model that behavior, share prompts and prompt libraries, share use case wins, and you'll find people will find additional use cases themselves. They'll find their personal wins. And then workflow wins, that is more intentional, meaning go into a team as the head of AI or as a team leader and really try to find specific use cases that the team will benefit from. And the way we suggest doing this is to decompose your human workflows, to sort of break them down, sort of describe them on paper, right? So, take your top 10 workflows and figure them out. How are they done today? And look for the workflows that you could introduce AI into, and then codify that for the team. So now you've got some team workflows that anybody who's responsible for that kind of output or that kind of task, they can rely on this new kind of workflow. So how do you do this? How do you find your either personal wins or team wins? Was a couple, three ways. One is just brainstorm with AI. It's like, okay, duh, right? Just ask AI to help you know where to use AI. You tell AI your job role, your company, what country you work in, whatever it might be, and prompt AI to help you find your own use cases. Do it with your team. This is a great team exercise, using AI and then just doing it at, old school brainstorms in a room or on Zoom or on on a whiteboard, and surface these workflows. They're likely going to be ones that the team doesn't like doing. So can they sort of outsource to AI, or they're challenging, and can AI make them easier, so to speak? So we typically see two types of workflows where the team's anxious to see if AI can help. The kind of grunt workflows, or the challenging workflows, and see if AI can play a role. And of course, learn from others. So I do think as head of AI, you are doing what we're doing. You are reading a lot. You are scanning. You are trying to fast follow. You are trying to learn from others. And so again, we'll get more and more case studies as the years go by, on these websites and in these white papers and so on. And Section will be sharing them. But do your best to learn from others to see if you can copy and fast follow others in terms of workflow. So here's a prompt for personal wins. Just take this prompt and use it yourself in terms of exposing some additional ideas for you in terms of how you might want to use AI. And by the way, one of the capabilities of Prof AI, and one of the reasons we built Prof AI as a platform, one of the things it does is it does get to know you and what job you're in, what company you work for, and it will help you find your use cases. This is sort of the power of AI. It can personalize this experience for you in a really relevant way. So Prof AI does this for its students, or its clients, I guess. It's like a coach. And of course, do this for your team. So here's a prompt. Again, grab this prompt or a version of this and use this at the team level. Maybe every member of the team should do this for the team, and then you can come together and kind of compare lists and create a master list, and then prioritize the top 5 or the top 10. I like to keep the aperture very wide open when it comes to workflow wins. I like to sort of brainstorm without any constraints, meaning AI can do a lot of things. It's its superpower, and it's its Achilles heel. It can be challenging for teams. So I like to keep the brainstorm open and then prioritize the list. So don't constrain the brainstorm. Get a lot of ideas in terms of where AI could help the team or yourself individually, and then just start to target the top few, the top 5, the top 10. Again, as I said, this is recent research, got updated actually this year. It just shows to me that the hundreds of potential use cases inside of companies for AI, which is its superpower and is its Achilles heel. It is what slows adoption. Its capability, its breadth of capability slows people down. They don't know how to use AI in this sort of repeatable way, or they try it once and it doesn't work and they get discouraged, right? The unreliability of AI in terms of its performance is also a real impediment to adoption. So we do need to encourage employees to kind of push through maybe what are some early struggles with finding their use cases. With workflow wins, think about how many people would be impacted by the workflow. As I said, brainstorm a longer list, pick the top 10, let's say, might be 5, 10, some number like that. Decompose that workflow, the way it's done today, the inputs, the outputs, the dependencies, the people that are involved, right? The data that's inside of that workflow, decompose them, write them down, and then look at them and decide where AI could help or not. One of the reasons pilots are getting stuck, and one of the reasons so many companies are struggling with pilots, is that they don't do this decomposition phase. They do not do this. They look at it and go, oh, the AI should be able to do that. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, oh, AI could do that. Well, really? Have you really thought that through? And then they sort of launch into a prototype and then some sort of pilot, and they didn't really understand exactly how the human workflow worked and what the dependencies were and what the inputs were. So if you don't know that well enough, there's no way you're going to introduce AI into that workflow successfully. You might get lucky and get a win, or you might get a part of the workflow enhanced by AI. But really, take time in this moment once you've got your list to decompose the workflow, and then sit around as a group and say to yourself, could AI do this, or could AI do part of this? By the way, you can feed that back into AI. Don't have to do this on your own. Once you've decomposed your workflows, describe them back to AI, particularly one of the new reasoning models, and say, listen, suggest where AI could be helpful here. So again, as simple as prompt libraries, building things like GPTs, or in Microsoft, that's called Microsoft Studio for Copilot users. I think that's what I would consider, early agents, where you can codify or productize these workflow changes. And of course, we're waiting for agents to show up, and there are showing up to some extent, but I think a lot of hype, as I said. But agents will be the way we do codify some of these workflows in the more advanced way. And then ultimately, some, of course, are building AI applications in terms of custom applications where the workflow is so significant, where the gain is so significant in terms of productivity lift or cost savings. Some are obviously trying to build applications. I don't encourage it unless you really understand the workflow and know that you'll have a significant gain to build an application. Okay, let's put it all together and race to a close, Maxwell. So this webinar has been about two tracks and one goal. The goal is adoption. We start the two tracks with strong leadership, alignment, and vision. Not an AI policy, but an AI manifesto. What I'm proposing to you is these two tracks. Track one is give everybody a best-in-class LLM. So organization, everyone meaning everyone either in a single team or the whole organization, depends on your span of responsibility or span of influence. It might be a large marketing team inside of an organization. You start with marketing or software engineering, or it's the whole organization. My point is, pick a population of employees and give everybody in that organization access to a premium or tier one LLM. That would be ChatGPT for Enterprise or Microsoft Copilot Pro, the paid version. Don't give them crippled AI or old AI. And then train them, support them, encourage them, and they will find use cases. And I think you'll see a productivity lift. At the same time, I would suggest doing this in parallel. You could stagger one first versus and then the second. At the same time, on your second track, you're using this framework, the triangle model, to unlock AI use cases and workflows. And so in that track, you're more intentional in terms of decomposing those human workflows in your language intensive functions and seeing where AI can make a difference. And you are going to prototype or pilot, and the pilot might be one person figuring out the workflow and then sharing it with the rest of the team. So think about this model as a model that's driving in 12 months high levels of AI adoption with the associated lift in productivity, which again will be hard to measure. And we'll talk about that before we wrap up. And high levels of LLM adoption and specific use cases and workflows where the LLM is being deployed to assist individuals or to assist teams. So you're going to use this model, this 4-component model: leadership, vision, champions, training, and then use cases. If you can keep all 4 of these aligned and progressing at the same time in parallel, you will have success. You will have challenges, you'll have resistance, you'll have some ups and downs, but this works. We have sort of compiled this model now after talking to hundreds of people inside of organizations, big and small, around how to do this, how to deploy AI. Resistance is slowing down deployment. This might be a good thing as we close here. I think we're going to need time to figure all this out. I am concerned around the pace of AI's development and the impact on our organizations and our work. I'm concerned about the impact on jobs. And in some respects, maybe this resistance is a good thing, at least in the short term, buying us a little more time to figure this out. But I do think that most organizations, certainly ones that are human capital intensive, will need to deploy AI very broadly in their organizations in order to remain competitive and in order to remain efficient from an operating perspective and an operating margin perspective. And I do think, particularly in software companies, a few CEOs are seeing that and moving quickly. Others are trying. We, as leaders, have to break down this resistance, though. We are beginning to see what success looks like. Again, it's hard to fast follow, but the good news is we are beginning to see case studies, and others are beginning to share more of what's working and what's not working. So we should learn from them. I believe the recession, if we're not already in it, we will be in it, and it will accelerate the adoption of AI. I think every CFO right now in corporate America, and I spent last week in New York talking to a lot of executives, and what I left New York with was the sense that absolutely executive teams, particularly CEO and CFO, intend to accelerate their investments in AI in order to make the organization more efficient. So I think that does mean slowing hiring, not filling backfilled positions, layoffs in some cases. I think this is going to be the best thing, if you will, not for necessarily the workforce, but certainly for the AI industry, meaning the recession. It will drive adoption, in my opinion, or at least deployments. The wins are not always flashy, so I do want to point out that, and we see this at Section all the time. We get these little gains. When you add them up, it's 8 hours saved here and 8 hours saved there. And I wouldn't have predicted this use case a year ago, and I probably wouldn't have found it. But someone in the organization finds it and sees how they can take a bunch of manual work and improve it or automate it in some way with AI. And then when you scale that out to the team, or you scale that out to a calendar year of tasks, of similar tasks, you start to see these kinds of savings. Nothing too flashy, nothing company changing or profit changing. It doesn't change the business dramatically, but they do add up. We didn't cover some things today. We will cover them in the coming months. Building your AI business case, redesigning workflows with agents, sort of separating the hype from the reality for how do you put agents to work, and even what are agents. Building custom AI applications. We'll talk about that later in the year. And then I do want to start to turn some of our attention at Section and share what we're learning with you around how AI will disrupt business models. So not the business model of AI companies, but our business models. How do we make money? Again, if we're in high capital intensive businesses, and Section is in one, if we're in consulting, if you're in any kind of service business using humans to deliver that service, I think there is disruption to our business models coming from AI, and we as leadership teams will need to wrap our heads around that and prepare for that. So that's a topic that's sort of on our radar now at Section, and we're going to want to start to talk about that and share that with you guys. That's all in the future. Here's the slide that McKinsey would charge $1 million for, or Accenture might charge you a couple million. A screenshot this slide. This is everything I just talked about in 10 steps, or 9, and 10 is celebrate. Practice patience, and don't forget to share wins and losses, and have high expectations. 10x ROI. If you spend $10,000 annually on your AI, I think you can expect at least $100,000 in ROI, which might translate to one headcount or however you want to think about it. So that my experience at Section of a team of 30, we are a language intensive business. We are high human capital intensity. We've had a 25% productivity gain from AI, at least 25 in the last 12 months. I can't tell you how I measured that. Mostly through sentiment of the team, and we're hiring at a slower rate than we thought we would have had to hire based on the growth that the company is experiencing. So that's how I feel the ROI is happening. You have two choices: do nothing or do something. Some of us can do nothing, and if you take that choice intentionally, I think that's a good thing, meaning it's intentional. If it's do nothing because your head's in the sand, probably not such a good thing. But if you do nothing because you don't see the value of AI, or you work in an industry where you're from a regulatory perspective, for example, you can't deploy AI, or your team can't deploy AI be intentional, just revisit that decision every 6 months. I'd ask you to check back in frequently to make sure that is the right call. I think most of us need to do something, though, as I said, particularly in human capital intensive businesses. And what you're looking for here is can you unlock that 10 to 15 to 20% productivity gain? Can you then codify it? Can you then bake it into your workflows, into your organization, so it now is the base level of capability and productivity? And can you sort of lock in those gains for the future? Again, we're all learning how to do this together. There is no one proven playbook. I like the one we just offered today. I think it will work, and know that your journey, whether it be individually or as an organization, personally or as a team, it will be bumpy. It will be a bit of a roller coaster. It just is. And so this is, I think, a good moment just to acknowledge that none of us have done this before. And in this respect, I don't think it's like digital transformation. It's not like building websites. It's not like turning on an e-commerce capability. It's not like digitizing the supply chain. I think this is very different than a lot of that. So this journey will have its ups and downs. I particularly want to credit Kyra, who's our lead on our AI upskilling team, who worked a lot with me to codify this into a new framework over the last few months. So I appreciate her support, as well as others, including Maxwell and the AIs. We need more people, leaders, to engage in what's happening and about to happen to how we work.